What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of videos sent to me by you post-trial for interviews so we can learn more about the case, what happened, why it happened, what's coming next. And that's what we're going to do in today's video because some of you sent me another interview. It's a short clip of the prosecutor from the Crumbley trials, from the Crumbley parent trials. And she discusses if she's thought about sentencing at all, what she thinks about what's going on with the school. She discusses which parent she thinks is potentially more responsible, why she brought these charges in the first place, and maybe more importantly, why she didn't. So we're going to get a lot of those questions answered that you guys had throughout the trial and you continue to have now. So I appreciate everybody that sent me this interview. We're going to jump into it. Make sure you guys give this video a like and subscribe to our page if you haven't already. It's also that time of year. It's March Madness. We're doing a bracket. We're going to post the link in the description. Maybe we'll pin a comment of the bracket so you guys can all come in, join, and whoever wins will get a prize. It's always random. If you know nothing about basketball, you will probably do better than the rest of us that may follow it all year round. So let's jump into this interview now, see what else we can learn from this trial, and what kind of precedent it may send, because that's a big question in everybody's mind. And the prosecutor knows that. And she talks about whether or not that was the goal of this prosecution and these charges.
Shooting. Very happy to have Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald joining us. Karen, I know you've had requests coming from all over the place. I really appreciate you being here. I'm also very mindful of your admonition Thursday night that there is no victory lap to be run here. But at the same time, I think you were hoping.
Which we have to appreciate because we've talked about that in other cases, how we don't love that and don't think anybody should because there are no real winners here because lives were still lost, more lives affected. Catching the bad guy does not necessarily always mean you need to take a victory lap.
Hopeful that you have paved maybe a new road in America's mass shooting problem.
So the question was, do you think you've paved a new road in America's mass shooting problem, which would mean, do you think you've created another way to prevent or stop mass shootings in America? Which I think a lot of people think maybe the answer to that is yes. Some other people think maybe this is just political. So let's hear what her answer is.
That's not what I started out to do. I think if the outcome of these prosecutions helps prevent gun violence, which is the #1 cause of death for children in this country, then I think everybody would say that's a positive outcome.
So she didn't set out to do that. So this wasn't some political scheme and plan. I will say, after watching a couple of her interviews, one thing I can say about her, I don't know her at all, is that she's very smart. She chooses her words wisely, which lawyers should always do. But she does this especially well because she still throws in there the statistic that she believes gun violence is the #1 cause of death of children in America. And if that's the result, great. Everybody should want that. I agree with her. That's what we should want is less school shootings. Is this the right way to get there? I don't know. I'm still kind of on the fence about that. And so she says that's not what she set out to do. She followed the law. She followed the evidence. And that's what brought these charges.
You know, I think there is a sense of relief, absolutely, for these victims. The parents, nothing can bring their kids back. But I think, when the criminal justice system works the way it should, it does provide some sense of relief and, gives people some faith in what we're doing. So, it's not, I don't think anybody who was in that school that day or had children in that school that day woke up this morning joyful about it. But yeah, we all need to know that justice can be achieved, and it was.
So we had two different trials, two different defense teams, two different juries. One defendant testified, the other did not. Were you concerned about what differing verdicts might have symbolized in this case?
So interesting thought, right? We talked about that a lot during James Crumbley's trial. If this was not guilty, how would that affect Jennifer Crumbley? And I said it really wouldn't. She's been convicted with her facts and her jury and her lawyer. If something happened in that trial to overturn that conviction, she's going to win the appeal. If something didn't happen, then she's not going to win her appeal, regardless of what happens to James Crumbley. The same can be said now that he's been convicted. It's no more likely or less likely that her appeal get granted. But I do think it could have potentially symbolized a problem for public perception and discussion and policy and changes and precedent going forward if we would have had split verdicts. So I do think that practically speaking and legally speaking, maybe nothing would have happened. But in the world of the media and in the public and actual change coming, a split verdict could have made a serious difference. Let's see what she says.
No, I was never concerned or really focused at all on what either case symbolized. I was just focused on what was the right thing to do. And I've always believed that the evidence was strong for an involuntary manslaughter case because it was absolutely gross negligence with this extreme set of facts.
And did it feel equal? Did you feel that the parents were equally culpable?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
That's another question a lot of us had. And there were articles and a lot coming out about how the mom was more culpable because moms are always, held to a higher standard when it comes to parenting, and the dad was going to get a free pass, and that's why he was going to be not guilty. Well, not according to the prosecutors. They felt they were equally responsible. And it's interesting, from the facts, I kind of felt like James Crumbley was more responsible. But how the trials went, I thought he also had the better chance of a not guilty verdict. Now, he ended up getting a guilty verdict, and it's interesting to see, in hindsight, the prosecutors all along thought they were equally culpable.
I said from the start that I believe in our criminal justice system, and we don't just charge cases that we absolutely know we can win, if that's what you want to call it. And
again, we've also talked about this a million times. That is the correct and proper way to explain this. Prosecutors don't just go win. They don't just go get convictions. They seek the truth and justice. And that's exactly how she explains it. Now, if you disagree with her and you don't think she does, or you think other things that she's done, shows her character to be otherwise, I don't know. I'm not really here to discuss that. I'm here to discuss this interview, and this is the appropriate way to explain it. Not all prosecutors would explain it appropriately either.
If the either jury had decided a different verdict, that doesn't mean the system failed. That's how it's supposed to work. But I was always very confident that if 12 reasonable people looked at what I saw at the start of this case and these egregious facts, starting with the post that was made by the shooter's mom, that very first day before we were even presented the case, it unfolded to me the same way it unfolded to everybody else in the state and the country.
Yeah.
And that was just a troubling post that led to a lot of questions.
Yep, sure did. We are headed, of course, towards sentencing. What do you, both parents have already been in jail for more than 2 years. What do you believe is the proper sentence here? Is it the maximum, which I believe is 15 years per count?
So they've already been in 2 years, which is going to be interesting when we start talking about, how much they get, how much they've served, what will they still have to do. And I think there are going to be people unhappy on both sides at the end of the day. But has she thought about sentencing? The trial lawyer who's preparing for trial, what does she think about sentencing?
Sentences are determined by statutory guidelines, which includes a lot of different factors and how to score the guidelines. Candidly, Devin, I just haven't thought about that. And
she says she hasn't thought about it, which is interesting to me. And we'll see it's less than a month away. I think it's April 9th or something. So she's going to come up with a recommendation based on those guidelines. And if you want to deep dive into sentencing guidelines, Pete Sardis, my partner, did one on the Elizabeth Holmes playlist on our YouTube page about exactly how that works in federal court. It's similar in other states and areas, but it gives you an idea about how sentencing guidelines works, all the things they take into account, prior crimes, actions in the community, victim impact statements, whatever it may be. And so it's really interesting if you do want to go through that, but she says she hasn't thought about it yet. My guess is she's about to start thinking about it.
And that is something that's coming up, but ultimately that's in the hands of the judge.
You haven't thought at all about what you'll recommend or hope for?
He's like, seriously? You haven't thought about this? It is hard to believe, but that's what she's going with at this point. I
have not.
Interesting.
That's just something prosecutors are pretty, most trial lawyers, but absolutely prosecutors we're very careful about focusing on the here and now. I never
She means not assuming you're going to win. Don't start thinking about sentencing before the trial because you don't want to assume you're going to win. All lawyers, but especially trial lawyers, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And that's basically what she's saying. I didn't want to think about it until we won. Now that they're convicted, I'll start thinking about sentencing.
Focus on or assume there's going to be a result that when the jury comes in it and they're about to announce a verdict, from the time you hear that they have one, it's about one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of your life if you try cases and you're
ditto 100%. We say this every time. It doesn't matter how good or bad your case is. That is the most nerve-wracking time for any lawyer, any trial lawyer. And you guys have felt it. A lot of you are like, why am I so nervous? Why do I feel like I'm going to throw up? A lot of you say that when we're waiting for a verdict, we're on verdict watch, or a verdict's been announced, but before it's read. So you get the feel of that anxiety.
So I don't look too far ahead. We will clearly do our work and absolutely draft a sentencing memorandum. But ultimately, the voices that matter most are not mine. Or Mark Keese, who's my co-counsel. They are the voices of the victims, and they are going to speak.
Interesting now what's coming up. We've talked to not only the parents of those who were killed, but a lot of Oxford parents who don't believe that this is at all the finish of what needs to take place. You are kind of the keeper of state law in Oakland County. The way that most of us, the way we read this, you can't go sue a school district, a public school district.
So before she talks about suing them civilly, there's been other interviews I've seen of her where they asked if any criminal charges were going to come against any employees or the school district, or if there's a way that you could do this, but there's really not. And she said no. If there were going to be criminal charges, they would have already been announced. So it seems like they're done in the criminal courts besides sentencing, and no other criminal charges are going to stem from this. But let's hear what she says about the civil side.
So I'm curious as to what you believe the likelihood is or the appropriateness of the suits that are going to go forward against the Oakland County High School and maybe some specific employees there.
I'm not a civil plaintiff's lawyer, and I'm not informed about the details of the civil lawsuits, and that was purposeful. My job as a prosecutor, our job as prosecutors, we do not want really to be interacting or working in conjunction with a civil suit, though it's absolutely their right to pursue one. But my statement and where I stand with the parents is about this accountability and transparency that's required. The guidepost report that was issued months ago was over 100 pages of a very thorough investigation, and it did reveal some troubling things. And these parents just want more transparency, and they want to know that these things are being addressed. And that's all part of what we're about to roll out with our commission, which I spoke to you about on the show, I believe, because we're very much focused on what happens before someone gets their hands on a gun. However, once that occurs, the standard protocol and evidence and data shows that what we really need is complete transparency.
Yeah.
So rolling out commissions, doing things before they get their hands on the guns, what happens after, we need transparency. These are the things that people have said in their messages to me are sound politicized or like political speech or political words. And the county prosecutor, state attorney, DA, district attorney, it is a political position. It's a legal position, but it's also a political position. So there is some crossover there. So I understand why some people feel that in some of the way that she speaks.
Yeah, and we will keep our eye on that as well. I also know it's appreciated by many that you kept your focus very much on the victims and the victims' families. I don't believe we've uttered the name of the defendants here once in this conversation. Karen McDonald, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Thank you.
You bet. We'll take quick.
All right. So that is another interview with the Crumbley prosecutor. We learned some new information there. We're going to be surprised at sentencing with what she brings because we don't know. My guess is she's going to ask for close to the max, if not the max, depending on what the sentencing guidelines work in Michigan. I don't know. I've never handled a criminal sentencing in Michigan specifically. But if this was in Florida, I would expect somewhere near the max to be requested. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think they're going to request as the state? Where do you think sentencing is going to end up? And what did you think about her explanation of who she felt more culpable, how she discussed the school, and some of the commissions and policies she wants to roll out to try to prevent gun violence in America. I appreciate you guys all joining me for this. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, and hit that reminder bell. I'm going to a conference. I'm about to leave for a conference all week, so it's going to be kind of sporadic videos from a hotel room. Who the heck knows how that's going to go? But you guys are the best for joining me as always. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.